Hello and welcome back to Robert Abs Travel. We have a sit down video for you today. We travelled Sri Lanka recently for 3 weeks, just over 3 weeks. Hopefully you've seen the vlog. If you haven't, they'll be linked in the description box. So when we were travelling Sri Lanka, I had so many questions about so many different things. So as we left Sri Lanka, I put a question box on Instagram, which you can follow us on Instagram if you are interested in like more daily content and more like tips and recommendations as we go. So yeah, I put an Instagram question box and got some questions from you guys and saved them because I thought it would be good to do like a sit down video and we can really go into depth on some of the questions. So here we are.
Okay, so we'll start with the first question. What was the most useful thing you brought to Sri Lanka?
I think for me the most useful thing was portable chargers, because Sri Lanka, like almost the whole country, have power cuts every day, and in some places they will have it like on a schedule, so they'll be able to tell you, oh, our power cuts in this zone are between 5:30 and 6:30. So in like restaurants and big hotels, usually they have a generator, so you don't even notice that the power cuts happen. But if you stay in homestays and like smaller hostels like we did, most likely they don't have a generator, and so they just kind of have a power cut for that hour or those 2 hours or whatever. And so we tried to work around it and go to like restaurants at those times or go and do an activity at that time so that we like avoided the power cut. But sometimes it was at like 8:30 till 9:30, or it was on a work day, and so we really relied on our portable chargers. Also on long buses as well. What about you?
So my most useful thing is actually this. So when there was power cuts and stuff, obviously the aircon and the fans and whatever go off, and I just get really hot really quite quickly. So we've got this electric mini fan, and it's rechargeable. We got this from the Miniso in Mexico.
Yeah, in Mexico last year. We actually bought it for Coachella because we knew we were going to be sleeping in the car, and we knew that we weren't going to have like air conditioning or fans obviously, and it was going to be hot, and we hung this like in the car and used it as a fan while we slept.
Yeah, super useful because like it just charges with like micro USB, same charger as the Kindle, so it's not an extra wire or anything, and it's pretty powerful.
But even like on buses and stuff, the public buses are like hot, sweaty, busy buses.
Got to give a special shout out, as we always do, to the water filter, the Grail bottle. You can't drink the tap water in most of Sri Lanka, so this obviously so useful. Just drink from the tap, filter it.
Yeah, and I think another thing in Sri Lanka is that we actually didn't stay in very many hostels, and in Latin America last year most hostels have like filtered water that you can refill, because not everyone has a bottle like this and they want to stop you from using plastic. Whereas in Sri Lanka, because we stayed in homestays, they just drink the water, or like they buy huge big things of bottled water like for their family. They don't have like the things for tourists, because it's usually just like someone's spare bedroom basically. And so these were even more useful because we would have spent so much on bottled water and also just created so much excess plastic. So yeah, that's always the most useful thing I think in any country. Our Grail bottles are the most useful.
Yeah. So the second question, this is a question that I had for Abs when she booked the flights. This is the question that, like, since we've left Sri Lanka, everyone that we meet that we say like, oh, like, yeah, we went to Sri Lanka, they ask this question. So is it safe to travel to Sri Lanka right now?
Yes.
Short answer, yes.
I think the short answer is we travelled there for 3 weeks and had no problems, and we didn't feel unsafe at all. We didn't see anything that was unsafe. Like, if it potentially felt like one of the safest places we've ever travelled to.
Yeah, definitely.
I think the longer answer is Sri Lanka has had a really bad couple of years. In 2019 they had the Easter bombings. Not long after that COVID hit, and then they completely closed down and had no tourism. Then in about February this year, February 2022, they opened again and had a couple of months of tourism, like trying to build it back up, and then there was an economic crisis. Like many countries that we've visited before, there is like some corruption in the government, there is some like political issues that happen, and that caused like protests and kind of like an uproar from the public, which is obviously what the media has portrayed and the Western media always seems to portray this one side of the story, and in reality, like when we asked these questions, when we first got to our first place that we stayed called Roy's Villas, we asked Roy, and Roy is a local, he's from Sri Lanka, we asked him all of those questions, like the same kind of things that people were asking us, like, is it safe, what happened, like why did these like protests happen, and etc. And he explained that really most of it was contained in the capital, which is Colombo. Obviously protests happened across the country, but mainly that was where like the media like flurry was, and all these like big protests. And you know, a lot of it is like the public and these people in these countries standing up for what they believe is right. And so while like it can be dangerous, I believe that people stand up for what they think is right is a good thing. And he said that like we are kind of moving past that now, and it caused a lot of like problems beyond the protests. So it caused like fuel shortages and medicine shortages, and just like all imports into the country were stopped, which obviously affected people's livelihood. I think the long and short of it is that it didn't affect our time there. We didn't see any protests, we didn't hear of any protests, and from what the locals told us, the president who left the country, who fled the country, actually now moved back to the country. Like he's not the president anymore, but he moved back, and I guess if he can live in the country safely, then so can tourists.
It's over, basically, yeah. So I would say it's definitely safe to travel now. The after effects of these protests and the economic crisis and stuff is like really affecting Sri Lanka, but not for the reasons that you think. It's like it's affecting it because of the lack of tourism, and tourism is such a huge part of the Sri Lankan economy. And we had so many people like just that we'd speak to in restaurants or like even on the street who'd be like, thank you like for coming to Sri Lanka, and like the nicest people ever. We never had any problems with anything, and the locals that we spoke to, they were like, that's all in the past, that was all the start of the year, and it's okay now. Like, so I would encourage anyone who's thinking of going to Sri Lanka like to definitely visit. It's beautiful, and like there's no problems anymore. You
can make a huge difference by spending your money in that country, and I think Sri Lanka is ready for you to return, and that is the best thing you can do to support these people, is to be in Sri Lanka. It's worth just opening your mind to the fact that what you might have seen in the media about these countries might not be the full picture. Because I think that's like what we've seen in so many countries, is that we had these like preconceived ideas about them, and then we get there and it's like a completely different world. And so having an open mind is like one of the most important things when you decide to travel. And
obviously it was in the media months ago when there was protests and the economic crisis, but then if there's not been anything else in the media to say like it's over, it's fine. So people
they never report and say like it's ended, like you're all good to go back. So
people just like, they'll always, not always, but like people have this image of the country, and then
from March
and it's gone back to normal now. So like,
just a disclaimer, they definitely are still struggling, and there definitely is still like political problems within the country, and we're not the right people to talk on that. But from the question is it safe for a traveller, and I think I would recommend that like you do travel and that it is safe from our experience, but that's not to diminish the experience of Sri Lankan people at the moment and the like political climate within which they live. So
next question, what was your favourite part?
You go first.
That's a tough one. I really liked Marissa, and I feel like you're gonna say the same thing. It was so beautiful. That beach was amazing, and you know, they had some pretty good waves in the sea. I had fun playing in the sea every day. There were a lot of nice places to eat, and it was just really relaxed and really nice.
I think Marissa had a really good balance. So it was like down to earth, and it felt quite local and quite like rustic, and you definitely could have eaten like local food every day and spent like £1 a day, like nothing. And we stayed in a homestay for the first couple of nights, and like it was just like very clean, very nice, but also local. The beach was beautiful, and it was like untouched beauty, and it wasn't like one of those beach towns where everything is like really built up. But then at the same time, like there was still beautiful cafes like Shady Lane Marissa, which you can see on my Instagram if you are interested, was one of our favourite cafes. And it's like almost at that sweet spot of travel where it's not quite been discovered, but it's on the way to being discovered. They're like the best moments to find a place, because you feel like you are one of the first people discovering it. We went to the Secret Beach and that was beautiful.
Yeah, Secret Beach was really nice. We had amazing sunsets like every single night basically.
Yeah.
We basically spent all day and all night on the beach the whole time we were there. Yeah, it was just really, really good.
I think if I had to recommend two places to get two very different experiences, but both amazing, it would be Sigiriya and then Marissa.
Yeah. I would say the same.
The sunrise from Pitarangala Rock and looking out onto Sigiriya Rock was just amazing. We stayed in a beautiful place. We did a cooking class. We chatted to Roy about Sri Lanka and his son, and I think it was a really good first place to start, and it's right in the centre of the country, and you can definitely travel to temples and more historic areas of the country from there.
Okay, the next question, is it easy to get around with the fuel shortages? So I'm going to answer this question in two parts. One, yes, it was very easy to get around. We got local buses everywhere. The buses were pretty crazy, they're so fast, and just packed. But it was like chicken buses in Latin America. I actually found it was easier because in Latin America, all the bus drivers are like, nah, that bus doesn't go, you need to get on my bus and then you need to go here and change. Whereas in Sri Lanka, everybody on the street and everybody in the bus stations and stuff wanted to help you.
Even if you're not getting on their bus?
Yeah, if you walk into a bus station and a bus driver would be like, where are you going? And you say, Sigiriya, they're like, oh, you need to go over there, get the number 48, that one. We usually use Rome to Rio. Yeah, it wasn't accurate in Sri Lanka at all, so just ask basically anyone and they'll be able to help you get around. Then we got a few tuk-tuks in towns that we were staying in.
I also did mention this in one of the vlogs. Usually when we travel, if we ever get taxis or anything like that, we will negotiate down the price. They're always going to give you a high price, and then it's expected that you'll negotiate. And we did negotiate with tuk-tuks, but getting on to the second part of the question, because of fuel shortages, the gas price is higher basically, which means that while we did negotiate the prices, we didn't negotiate it too far down, because to us, the difference might have been 20 pence. And that feels like a huge difference for them and not that much of a difference for us. And so we just didn't feel like it was worth it when we're there to contribute to their economy and contribute to those local people.
They have started to try and build a system to try and combat fuel shortages and stuff. So everybody gets a QR code, and when you go to the petrol station, you have to scan your QR code, and it will tell you how much, everyone has an allowance of how much petrol they can have per week and stuff. So we didn't see any queues at petrol stations. We weren't personally affected by the fuel shortages.
Just as we left start of October 2022, they introduced tourists so that if you want to rent a tuk-tuk, which is quite a popular thing to do, and drive around the country, you can have your own QR code, and there's specific fuel stations where you can pick up petrol as a tourist. Renting a tuk-tuk is a really popular thing. There's a company called Tuk Tuk Rental, and you see them kind of everywhere. They have banners on the actual tuk-tuk so you can recognise them. We didn't do it because we knew, first of all, we wanted to get the train from Kandy to Ella, and with the tuk-tuk you then have to pay to get your tuk-tuk driven that distance. We weren't super confident about driving on the roads because obviously it's a very different driving culture, and then there were days when we didn't really travel anywhere. We just walked to places, and then you're sort of paying an expense that you're not using. I guess it's kind of like a scooter in Thailand. If you don't do anything for the day, you still have your scooter. While that's definitely a low cost, it's still a cost, and so as budget travellers we just didn't really need it, I guess. My advice would be to use the local tuk-tuks when you need to. It's so cheap. It's way cheaper than renting your own tuk-tuk, and while that might be a cool experience and maybe you could do it for a day if you want to just have the experience, I don't think it's necessary.
So another question was, what is the food like?
Spicy.
I love the food. There was a lot of curries, a lot of lentil curries as well, which was really good. A lot of vegetarian food. I used to not be able to eat spicy food at all, and when we went to Mexico I was like, I'm just going to eat all the spicy sauces and stuff. Super
easy to be a vegetarian. Almost all the locals are vegetarian. It's possible to get chicken. You ate chicken quite a lot.
Yeah, a few chicken curries. So a lot of places you can get your rice and 3 curries and whatever, and it's so cheap and you get so much food as well.
We also loved in the little grocery stores, they have samosas.
Yeah, there'd be these little almost like bakery kind
Yeah.
of things, or in random places, and it'd just be like a glass cabinet with all these little things in them, and we'd just be like, 2 of them, 1 of them. Yeah.
And that's why it's good to travel with someone like Rob, because Rob will always try things, and then he'll be like, yeah, that's gross, don't try it. But it was all amazing. I loved the food there.
Yeah, overall, like, one of the best countries for food that we've been to so far, I think.
I had probably the best curry of my life, and it actually was in an Indian restaurant in Nuwara Eliya called like Ambul's vegetarian restaurant.
It's in the vlog.
It's in the vlog, yeah, watch the vlog. And it was near tikka masala, and it was, I still think about it. Like, I think about it all the time.
I do as well. We did a cooking class with Rory, thanks Rory, and he sent us the recipes as well, so next time we get an opportunity to cook, we're gonna cook some Sri Lankan curries.
Yeah.
Next question: what age should you be to visit Sri Lanka? I'm gonna answer this one.
Yeah, so I don't know who this came from, like whether it was someone older or someone younger. I think this is like one of the best things about Sri Lanka, actually. You definitely could travel there as like a young backpacker, especially if you were in like a couple or a group of 3 girls. It would potentially be, right now, a bit harder as a solo traveller because you might not meet a lot of travellers. We didn't meet a lot of people. We probably met like 4 travellers in the whole time we were there.
Hostels were like 4 times as expensive as like hotels or homestays.
In terms of age, like I really don't think there's a limit. Like I think you could be 3 girls who are 18 and traveling for the first time, and Sri Lanka would be a really easy place to travel. People speak English, it's safe, everyone's really friendly and helpful. It's a very small country, so it's easy to travel around. It's like a nice entrance into traveling in Asia. So I definitely think you could be 18. You also could travel with a family, and we saw a lot of children there actually. But then also you could be 65 and travel there. You can get a driver. We saw a lot of people had, where they have like a driver who they pay and they drive around the whole country. It really just has a bit of everything. I really truly think Sri Lanka should be on everyone's bucket list.
Next question: is there anything you wish you knew before you visited?
One thing for me that I think would have been useful to know before we left is that I needed more things to cover up. I brought mainly like shorts and small tops, like this kind of thing, which is fine. And there was never, no one ever said anything to me, but I think because we were getting like public buses and we were using like local transport and staying in homestays, you are around the local people who are more conservative, and therefore you feel a lot more exposed.
You stand out.
I was wearing like what would be acceptable in Western countries in the summer, but is potentially not as acceptable in like these more conservative communities. So I would have liked to have taken some more long trousers. I think we will leave the questions there. Hopefully this video wasn't too long and it was useful. If you have more questions, then leave them in the comments below.
If I was going to say one thing about Sri Lanka, I would say go there. It's beautiful and it's perfectly safe, and it's great, and I can't really say any bad things about Sri Lanka, to be honest.
Yeah, if you like this style of video, then let us know, because we can definitely do one for some of the other countries that we visited. If you enjoyed it, then please like and please subscribe. That will help us so much. Catch you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.